numbers are moving. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I've been back from the retreat that Debbie and I went on at Forest Refuge for the month of May. Been back for almost a week and a half, 2 weeks, getting close, I think, something like that. And still reflecting on some of the effects of that, and Debbie and I sort of did a bit of a debriefing the other day, just catching up on what the experience was like, because we were in mostly silence during the time, and then she was at her dad's, and so we hadn't had much of a chance to check in about it. And one of the things that came up, some discussion anyway around it, was sort of her realization that even with all the busyness of a long period of lots of work and not a whole lot of formal retreat time, that after an adjustment period, and I found this very true for myself as well, after an initial adjustment period, that you realize that the work you've been doing, even though it seems to have been subterranean and clouded over by lots of engagement and activity, that the path is still making its way into your heart, mind, into citta, and establishing itself, even though formal practice sometimes takes a back seat. That living the life of a committed Buddhist practitioner, following precepts, reaching towards simplicity, renunciation, and giving, generosity, as well as periods of reflection, meditation, listening to teachings, and periods of formal meditation. All of it together, but with the firm basis of sila, dana, and renunciation. They do their work, even though we may not be consciously aware of it all the time. So that when the time comes that there is the opportunity for letting go of the normal routine and jumping into a retreat, and after that kind of transition period, that, wow, the mind does settle more peacefully. This is different than it was a number of years ago. The work has been going on an internal level, establishing kusala citta, the wholesome, the skillful mind, and that kusala citta is accessible when the routine is allowed to settle, and we can tune in to the inner practice. So, it's just it was a realization to me, one that I've had before, coming in and out of busy periods at times in my monastic life, but also just a heartening thing that I can share, that we can share with people who have busy lives, that with a heart dedicated towards commitment to the Dhamma and doing those basic practices of keeping precepts and reflecting on that, and working towards wholesome action, that those have their effect in the heart. The formal practice is, of course, very important, but I think we've all come to some sort of realization that just doing formal practice, meditation on its own, without a background and a participation of all of the other aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path is limited. It's a unfortunate kind of way that some practices developed as meditation practices come to the West. It's become a meditation-only kind of practice in some areas, but you start to realize that to be successful towards reaching the goal of real liberation, that it has to be multifaceted and encompass the entire Eightfold Path. So I brought up just some reflections on kamma, action. Kamma, karma, basically just means action. And the fact that it's rooted firmly in cetana, or intention, or volition. There was a discussion at tea time the other night about intentional action is what causes results from a karmic standpoint. The actions that don't have any intention one way or another behind them will certainly have some sort of peripheral effect, but in terms of the moral quality in the mind, intention is a required factor. So kamma is actually a moral law, in a sense, in that action that's based in wholesome states of mind will have eventually, at some point, in some way, wholesome results. Actions that are based with unwholesome or unskillful states of mind, minds that are clouded or deluded or angry or based on some sort of harmful, defiled state of mind, they'll have unwholesome results at some point down the line. So karma is a moral law, but heavily dependent, the results of karma are heavily dependent on intentional action. Intention, cetana, what is, how can you describe it, or how can you know it? I experience it when I look at it as this momentum or this formal this thrust of mind, this movement of mind that precedes any kind of action. Action being in body, speech, or mind, body, speech, or thoughts, and it's this momentum that is generated prior to actually taking an action, and it's definitely a mental experience, and you can see it happen in extreme states of wanting, desire, craving, or aversion. You can feel that momentum start to arise if you have some sense of clarity in the mind at all, even if it's just a teeny little bit. You sometimes in strong situations you can start to feel that rise of energy that wants to express itself in some sort of action, and it's that mental momentum, that mental rising up based on some sort of strong state of mind that gives you an idea of what intention, cetana, feels like. So it's usually a movement to get something or to get away from something, to negate something. And it results in some sort of speech or some sort of action or some sort of thinking, mental process, often proliferative mental process. So it's part and parcel of any kind of karma, karmic producing activity. Karma, kamma, also is often used in conjunction with the word vipaka, or result. And we can see that when we have intentional actions based on positive states of mind, then the result, either now in the moment or later on, is positive. Negative intentions will result in negative results. And there's also the mixture of the two. And then there's the fourth kind of kamma, the kamma the kamma that leads to the ending of kamma, which is the action that is based in practicing with the Noble Eightfold Path. All the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path is the kamma, the action, intentional action, that leads to the end of the kammic process itself, which is the hallmark path towards liberation. So oftentimes we think of karma, in its colloquial uses as, oftentimes in a negative sense. It's like, something's bad happening to me. It's because of some negative karma I did in the past, and I'm experiencing the results of it now. But it's just really important to remember to start to reflect on the positive results of good actions from the past. And if we really reflect on it, we can see, probably most of us in this room, if probably all of us in this room, are experiencing the results of really positive, wholesome past actions. We have abundant requisites: food, clothing, shelter, medicines, material objects, for the most part, that we need, and oftentimes, quite a bit more than we need. All this is the result of past wholesome action coming to fruition. We're with good friends. We're surrounded, at least in this monastery here, by really good-hearted people who are interested in truth and interested in establishing, not only for themselves, a wholesome skillful internal state of mind, but also looking out to the world around us and wanting to ensure that all creatures, all friends, people, animals that we come in contact with have that feeling of security and safety and well-being too. And being with these like-minded people that we're all with is the result of past wholesome action. We set the causes and conditions for this to come to fruition and are experiencing the results of that past good action right here and now. We've come in contact with Dhamma, another very, very rare, when you think about it, result of past karma. All of us have done something in the past to bring us here to Abhayagiri, whether we're visiting or whether we're resident. A very, very fortunate set of circumstances that we've acted upon in the past to bring us right here and now to the Dhamma. The requisites are here, our mental capacities are intact to be able to understand it. The teachings are present. We're with people who want to explore and experience the results of practice. And we're in a community that's committed to doing that all the time, every day. And just to recollect how rare that is. And to remember that this comes from past action. So I always find it's really important not to just think of karma and view our lives in terms of, where we screw up and what we've done wrong and all of our defiled mind moments, which most of us still experience, but to reflect and rejoice in the goodness that we have experienced as a result of past positive karma. And with that kind of recollection, to make that determination to keep on making that kind of karma, and particularly the fourth kind, the karma that leads to the ending of karma. This leads to a very wholesome, easeful state of mind, and particularly when we reflect on it, not just do it, but do it and then also reflect on it in this way, leads to a real quality of pamoja, what we call pamoja, meaning ease of mind or delight or gladness is the basis of that stage in the Anapanasati teachings. Breathing in and out, one gladdens the mind. It's referring to pamoja. And it's a very happy, skillful state of mind, as we often hear. Many of us have picked up the practice of meditation, thinking that what we need to do is get concentrated and then we'll be happy. But as we've often heard, really, what we need to do first is establish a sense of ease and happiness in the mind, and it's that mind that actually is able to settle in to collectedness and concentration much more naturally. We get the order reversed. So this development of pamoja, gladness, and a sense of well-being is one of the most skillful ways that we can experience happiness and satisfaction, because it's based in a mental quality of skillfulness. We of course can experience many pleasures of the senses, eyes, ears, tongue, nose, and body, and those do in their own way bring a source of pleasure. But if we're looking for something that is much more secure and stable form of happiness and pleasure, then developing those mental qualities that lead to pamoja, to that gladdening of the heart, that easeful state of mind that reflects and feels the effect of skillful action and the development of the Eightfold Path. The recollection of the good fortune we have, the recollection of generosity that we provided, the recollection of keeping precepts and the non-harming that we offer to the world. That's the kind of happiness that is much more stable and long-lasting. And that's what forms the basis also of kusala citta, so that even that subterranean ongoing development of the heart that we may not be so completely aware of all the time is plugging away based on that sense of developing a gladdened mind, a mind filled with pamoja. Cetana, intention, is, going back to thinking about that a little bit, it's also a very subtle state of mind that is kind of in operation all the time. We're often not so conscious of it when it happens. As I was saying, we can experience it in the very strong mind states when we're have a semblance of mindfulness, but that intention is always at the basis of much of our action, whether we know it or not, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So that with a confused state of mind or a mind that has delusion in it, we're making Kamma all the time, even though we may not be so aware of it. And it's good to remember too that intention or cetana is different from motivation. Intention often being just that motivation to perform a certain action, whether it's skillful or unskillful, and motivation being the underlying quality of what's driving that intention. So that many actions with different motivations will have different effects in our karmic stream. So that, the intention to take something that's not ours, it can have a very weak kind of motivation, such as you're at work or you're in the office and you see something that might be useful at home, like a pen, and you're just not thinking very clearly, not with a strong intention, but just sort of with a lack of mindfulness. You pick up something and think, oh, okay, well, I could use this, so I will. And you take something that's not yours. So there is an intention there that's based on an unskillful motivation, but it's not very conscious, versus something that's very conscious, like the mind of a thief going to burglarize a house. Same action of taking something that's not yours, but instead of just pure mindlessness, it's there's the mind like a thief, which has a much stronger karmic consequence. So motivation has its role in terms of how we experience the effects of our actions as well. So our practice is often not only to see the intention rise to take a certain action, but to examine the motivation behind it. And that helps make it more conscious. And that is a very clear way that we can see that mindfulness practice, developing mindfulness and clear comprehension is a very important tool, because that gives us the ability to examine what's going on underneath any kind of intention that's arising for action, and to be able to make a moral choice to stop it if it looks like it's moving in the wrong direction. So in terms of developing wholesome states of mind and experiencing the results of those, we actually need to have a good degree of sati sampajanya, mindfulness and clear comprehension, to be able to see the intention that is arising and to make a moral determination. Is this skillful or is this unskillful? And then to readjust through choosing, through intending to put our attention in a skillful way into the activity, into the action, and to prevent us from doing any unskillful action. And in fact, when, in quiet states of mind, when you're looking at this factor of intention as it arises, you can also look at it in terms of a contemplation of anatta, not self or self, because the quality of intention can sometimes be confused with or have a strong infusion of self, because the quality of intention has this element of choice related to it. It can often be seen as, oh, this is who I really am. I am somebody who can act in a certain way to produce certain results. I have the willpower through the use of intention to perform some sort of action. And when we look back and you see that intention arise to make a choice, there's a real sense of personal power to that, and to adjust that action based on that self-experience. The perception of self enters into intention very easily. But to realize that intention also is a cause, is a mental factor that has its own causes and conditions, and only masquerades with this sense of anatta, so that intention to act in a certain way actually arises from other conditions, like when there's contact and we have a certain experience, and if there's greed, hatred, or delusion underneath the experience, then the intention arises essentially controlled by the greed, hatred, or delusion. That's what's driving the intention to get something, or to get away from something, or to act skillfully or to act unskillfully. Or, well, actually in the case of greed, hatred, and delusion, acting unskillfully, that's what's driving it. But the intention arising to act skillfully comes from usually mindfulness and clear comprehension as the driving force. So these are mental factors that are actually at play with clear comprehension, mindfulness driving the driving force to form an intention for skillful action, greed, hatred, and delusion being the driving force to form an intention for unskillful action. So we can see that the more we habituate ourselves and the more focus and attention we use to bring up mindfulness and clear comprehension, the more likely we are to be able to judge the moral quality as we bring up for review something we're about to do. And with that clarity in clear comprehension, then we choose the wholesome course, because we know that it feels better. That's the whole thing of what we're doing is developing the skillful states of mind, because we know it will bring us a stable sense of contentment and happiness and freedom from suffering. So this is really just reflecting and using the teachings on Kamma to realize that we actually have a choice in how we experience our lives. Sometimes karma is thought of as kind of this deterministic, fatalistic law. That's how it's actually taught in some other traditions, Eastern traditions. That, we are essentially under the control of karmic laws, and we have absolutely no control over them. Some past action has a determined effect in the present or the future. But the Buddha introduced the different concept of the fact that we actually not only experience the results of past karma in the here and now, but the future, how we experience it in the present moment and what moves on into the future is something that we do have this ability to modify through appropriate attention and through skillful intentions. We can receive karma from the past in a way that results in less suffering. We can then generate skillful action, skillful karma, to ameliorate the effect in the present moment and to produce a positive effect for the future. So there is this ability to understand and have some control over how we receive karma from the past and how we generate well-being in the future. So this is how it differs from that deterministic view. And again, the more we bring in the mindfulness and clear comprehension, the more we'll naturally choose the skillful forms of action. So karma is a law to be reflected on, and to realize that it's not just a theoretical, statement of any kind from the Buddha, but it's something that gives us the power for change, the power to redirect our lives, and the power to move beyond our usual habitual ways of attaining happiness or avoiding pain, to be able to act clearly and with good intention to create positive effects, and also to really hone in on developing that karma that leads to the disbanding of karma and the realization of the unconditioned. And when we reflect on all the good karma that we've created and the conditions that we've got, and the opportunity to practice, that gives rise to a sense of urgency. That's when we reflect on that. It's a karmic action, and it produces the vipaka, the result of a sense of urgency, realizing that this is a rare opportunity with all of these causes and conditions coming together. And, reflecting time is short. When the end of my life comes, where do I want my mind to be? What state of mind do I want to be in? And remembering that, life is short. Debbie was also bringing up a reflection that she received from Ajahn Sucitto, and talking about how all of us want to live our lives and how we want to spend our time. And Ajahn Sucitto's very terse reflection that he uses to remind himself when he gets wrapped up in the events of the world is to just say, already dead. So that brings us back to this sense of, okay, already dead. How would I have wished to have spent my last moments? So to use that as a reflection, to keep on bringing up our mindfulness, clear comprehension, choice of actions that move towards gladdening the mind, settling the mind, and choosing skillful ways of being in the world. So offer that for Saturday night reflection.